Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I'm going to be doing my power rankings for the 2025 Japanese Grand Prix. Not the most eventful Grand Prix, obviously, like I said yesterday in my review. So these power rankings should be pretty quick. So starting off first with number 20, a driver who qualified P20, finished the race in P20, and that is Lance Stroll. Out-qualified by his teammate Fernando Alonso by about 9.5 tenths of a second. Unfortunately made a mistake on his final flying lap in Q1, which was really the reason for his elimination. Pretty costly mistake in the race, didn't have particularly strong pace, did a really wonky two-stop strategy for some reason, which really didn't help things, and ended up finishing 48.1 seconds behind his teammate Fernando Alonso, and was the only driver lapped. Just given, I think that this was pretty much a qualifying race similar to Monaco last year. Again, whatever he did in the race couldn't really improve his really poor qualifying position. Number 19, I'm going to go with Esteban Ocon, probably one of the biggest surprises in terms of disappointments this weekend. Like I talked about in my preview video going into this race, Ocon had a really good track record at Suzuka, so I was expecting him to do pretty strongly and be the lead of the two Haas drivers, but turns out pretty bad weekend. Qualifies 18th, out-qualified by his rookie teammate by 4.8 tenths at his teammate Behrman's first time at the Suzuka track. In the race, not really able to make up ground, finishes 18th and finishes 28.9 seconds behind his teammate Behrman. Number 18, Jack Doohan, qualified 19th, out-qualified by his teammate Gasly by 6.9 tenths of a second. Obviously, massive crash in FP2, a really silly rookie mistake by him. I'm not really counting that into my power rankings too much because I don't like to put practice in, use practice in my power rankings unless like a crash that happens in practice causes the driver to not be able to race or not be able to qualify. For example. But for doing not a great qualifying session in the race, I think his pace was okay, still pretty far off Gasly though. He ended up finishing 19.2 seconds off, despite the fact that Gasly had a really slow pit stop, which definitely cost him track position after the pit stops. And again, pace not fantastic. So for doing, it comes home 15th in the end. And I do think there is starting to be a bit of pressure building on him. He's had 3 Grand Prix now this year, and all of them he's had like something kind of go wrong in each of those 3 races. Number 17, another disappointing drive for Liam Lawson, but it is better than the P20 he had in both Australia and in China on my power rankings. I am giving him a little bit of slack for this race, given that it's his first race back in the car. I know it's a track he's raced at before in Super Formula and in 2023, but again, first time back in the car without winter testing. I do think it will take a little bit of time for him to kind of get up to speed. And yeah, pretty disappointing weekend for Lawson. Qualifies 13th, qualified by his teammate Hadjar by 1.3 tenths of a second. And then in the race, really bad strategy, went really, really long on the medium tires. I think pitted mid-lap, lap 32, lap 33, and then came out on the softs. Didn't quite have the same pace as Sainz, who had a very similar strategy to him, and ends up finishing 17th, 45.6 seconds behind his teammate. Number 16 is Yuki Tsunoda, the other driver who, of course, basically swapped positions with Lawson. Now for Tsunoda, I definitely think his first weekend at Red Bull was a big improvement on the 2 weekends that Lawson showed, but it was not a strong weekend. I would say, like, if you compare it to all of Paris's races, for example, it would still be, a pretty bad weekend for Paris, on that kind of scale. So for Tsunoda, tough weekend. I think obviously he was massively hurt by the fact that he made that mistake in Q2. Overtaking the race was basically impossible, so he was pretty much locked in to that position, except for basically the one overtake on track, overtaking Lawson on the first lap, and then basically undercutting Gasly in the pit stops. Qualified 14th, like I said, out-qualified by his teammate Verstappen by about half a second, but in Q1 and through the practice sessions, admittedly looked pretty good. So I do think that there are some positive signs there for the future races, which is something that couldn't really be said about Lawson in his 2 races at Red Bull. And then again, finishes 12th in the Grand Prix, 58.4 seconds behind his teammate, who of course won yesterday's race. Number 15 is Carlos Sainz, qualified 15th. Actually, not qualified 12th, but was given a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Hamilton in qualifying. Really unfortunate for him. Half a tenth off of Albon, but still, he's been out-qualified by Albon all 3 races so far this year. So I still think, there's a bit of a learning curve there. But again, those qualifying gaps are steadily decreasing a little bit. In the race, not great pace, but was quick. Not great in the first stint, but was pretty quick in the end on the soft tires. Ends up finishing 14th. A couple nice overtakes towards the end of the Grand Prix, but still finished 33.8 seconds behind his teammate, who again, for the 3rd straight Grand Prix, was in the points. The car is pretty good. It's capable of points almost every weekend, or at least every weekend so far. And unfortunately for Sainz, he's not really capitalizing on that pace. Number 14, Gabriel Bortoleto, qualified 17th, but only half a tenth off his teammate Hulkenberg. And then in the Grand Prix, finished 19th, 1.9 seconds behind his teammate. Very, very close in pace to his much more experienced teammate Hulkenberg. First time at this track, of course, Suzuka is not on the F2 calendar, so that's an added challenge. I thought Bortoleto did a pretty decent job. Only one thing would have been the fact that he lost two to 3 positions at the start of the race, and there were other drivers on the hard tires like he was who didn't lose position. So I think that's something that he will get better at as he gets more experience, but that was really the only blemish on his weekend. Number 13, Lewis Hamilton. Not a great weekend for the Ferrari driver. Qualified 8th, 3/10 off his teammate. And then in the race, starting on the hard tires, I thought did a good job at the start not to lose positions. Got past Hadjar for P7. That was one of the few overtakes, and I think the only on-track overtake in the first half of the race. Came home to P7, 13.1 seconds behind his teammate Leclerc, but still, again, not a fantastic weekend. And with a very, very similar strategy to Antonelli, looked slower than him, despite the fact that it's Antonelli's 3rd Grand Prix. So that's definitely not particularly promising. But again, for Hamilton, I think there's still a bit of a learning process here. And I think the car is definitely, on one hand, not very good. It doesn't have a podium yet this year. But I think on the other hand, I think Hamilton's still trying to, adjusting and finding his way at his new team. Number 12, Nico Hulkenberg, qualified 16th. That's about what you would expect for the Sauber. Again, like I said, half a tenth off his up on his teammate. And then in the race, finished 16th. Couldn't really make up positions and finished 1.9 seconds ahead of his teammate. Again, I think a solid weekend, but again, not really top 10 worthy, I would say. Number 11, I'm going to go with Pierre Gasly, qualified 11th, out-qualified his teammate Doohan by about 7/10 of a second. And then in the race, I think really unfortunate that he had that super slow pit stop, lost a couple of positions there, and ended up coming home in 13th, 19.2 seconds ahead of Doohan. And again, when I know Doohan pitted very, very early for those higher tires, but at the same time, Gasly's pace was much, much better than Doohan's, and again, he had that slow stop, so again, that kind of counterbalances it a little bit. Number 10, I'm going to go with Fernando Alonso. I think a pretty solid Grand Prix all around for the Spaniard. Qualified 12th, 9/10 above his teammate. I know that gap's pretty much entirely down to Stroll's mistake, but I still feel like Alonso qualified about where he should have in the Aston Martin. In the race, finishes in 11th. One position gain was basically for Gasly's slow stop, and ended up finishing 48 seconds in front of his teammate. Number 9, Kimi Antonelli. I think pretty solid weekend. Again, I do think that there were 8 drivers who I think had better races or better weekends than him, but still, given that it's 3rd Grand Prix, given that he still lost a teammate head-to-head in both qualifying and the race, I think top 10 is still very, very good for him. He qualified 6th, ill-qualified by Russell by 2.4 of a second, and then in the Grand Prix finished 6th. That very, very impressive stint on the hard tires after his pit stop, set the fastest lap of the race, and also became the youngest driver to lead a Grand Prix as well. So the youngest lap in F1 history, or youngest fastest lap and youngest driver to lead a race. Those were both Verstappen records, but now they belong to Antonelli. So again, really, really solid Grand Prix for Antonelli. His progress has been very good. It's very good to see. and I'm excited to see what he can do in the coming races, especially once we get to Europe and tracks that he'll know much better than the ones that we've had the last couple races. Number 8, I'm going to go with, let's see if we can get this. Yeah, number 8, I'm going to go with Oliver Bearman, qualified 10th in the Haas, which I think was, again, maybe outperforming the car a little bit. Out-qualified his vastly more experienced teammate, Ocon, by 4.7 tenths. And then in the race, finished 10th in the Grand Prix, 28.9 seconds above his teammate Ocon, and picked up one solitary point for that 10th place. So again, I think really, really strong race. Not a whole lot more to add. Didn't see a whole lot of him on the live feed, on the TV coverage. But again, I think just a really, really solid race for Bearman. Now, I'm going to do these two drivers together just to make things simple. So number 6 and number 7 are your two McLaren drivers, Norris and Piastri. Norris ahead of Piastri pretty much just because Norris out-qualified Piastri, to be honest. I think in the race, I think Piastri's pace was a little bit stronger, but again, it's one of those things that's pretty hard to tell, as we never got to see either driver really running in clean air for much of that Grand Prix. For Norris, qualified second, out-qualified his teammate Piastri by 0.03 of a second, and then finished second in the Grand Prix, and Piastri finished third, and the two of them were separated by 0.7 seconds. So very, very small margins between the two drivers. I did think they were okay this weekend, but I really felt like a McLaren driver should have won this Grand Prix. Lots of high-speed corners, which is where the McLaren excels. Very, very, very fast car in those situations. So honestly, I think that unfortunately for them, they didn't maximize the car this weekend, which is why, despite the fact that they were both on the podium, neither of them are in the top 3 of my power rankings. Now, number 5, I'm going to go with George Russell. So for Russell, qualified 5th, out-qualified his teammate Antonelli by 2.4 tenths. But that being said, I do think he made a bit of a mistake his final run in Q3, so I think qualifying could have been a little bit better than it was. Maybe could have out-qualified Leclerc, but I think really it's only one position, so not really a massive deal, and don't think he really had the pace to qualify inside the top 3. As for the Grand Prix, finished the race in 5th, 1.3 seconds ahead of his teammate. I think he was really just managing the gap, not pushing too hard, just because he knew that there wasn't really much point, given that overtaking was so difficult. Again, and that's really all I have to say for George Russell. Now, into the top 4, number 4 is Alex Albon. So for Albon, qualified in 9th, out-qualified his teammate Sainz by 0.05, like I said, and then in the race finished 9th, 33 seconds, 33.8 seconds in front of his teammate Sainz. Again, really solid Grand Prix, I thought, coming very, very close to maximizing the pace in the car. Given how close he was to Hadjar at the end, I think maybe if this was a track where overtaking was possible, he might have been able to get 8th place. But that being said, I do think that, again, this is a track where in these circumstances with the resurfacing, cold temperatures, the fact that there's almost no degradation, it meant overtaking was almost impossible yesterday, I should say. But again, I think overall, really, really solid race for Albon. Now, number 3, best of the rest in the midfield was Isaac Hadjar. Qualified 7th, again, really impressive on a track that's known as a driver's track, where basically it really rewards driver skill. And this is his, of course, first time racing here. He's never driven this track in the junior categories. In the race, finished 8th. Really only, I guess, drop of position was where he got overtaken by Hamilton in the Ferrari. But that being said, I think that was to be expected. So again, not really holding that against him. And again, did a really good job compared to Lawson, finished 45.6 seconds in front of him. But I think one question I do have is that obviously now that Tsunoda's been promoted to Red Bull and Lawson's basically now brought down to Racing Bulls, is that if Lawson has, a slump, kind of like Kvyat did in 2016, and Hadjar basically becomes de facto team leader, I think in a way it'll be really hard to judge his performance because there isn't really a known benchmark, a known quantity in the other seat who we can kind of judge and use to compare against past seasons, since you really have 2 rookies. I know, of course, Lawson raced last year and the year before, but again, if his confidence is really truly shot from his 2 race stint at Red Bull, much like Kvyat's was for much of 2016, that can make it very, very hard to kind of judge how good the Racing Bulls is. So, for example, the Racing Bulls could have been the clear 5th best car this weekend. Or even the 4th best car, maybe close in pace to the Ferrari. But again, it's going to be one of those things that's very, very difficult to judge, given that you basically have 2 rookies in the scene. But not taking anything away from Hadjar, I think he did a really, really good job this weekend to secure his first F1 points. Now, number 2, I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. Qualified 4th, out-qualified his teammate Hamilton by 3/10. Thought did the most he could with the car in qualifying, and then in the race came home to 4th. I think he was quite a ways off the top 3. I think 15 plus seconds or so off the top 3, kind of showing that there was quite a big pace gap there. But nonetheless, I think holding off Russell, I think he maximized the most that he could with what is, I think, a bit of an undercooked Ferrari. Definitely not as good as it was to end 2024, which I think will be, very disappointing for both Leclerc and for Hamilton. Now, number 1, not a big surprise. I alluded to this yesterday in my review, and that is, of course, Max Verstappen. So Verstappen qualified on pole with that absolutely amazing pole lap. Shocked even me. I was watching live and I couldn't believe it. With 2 seconds after 2 sectors, the final run in Q3, I think he was about a 10th down on. It would have been Piastri, or either Piastri or Norris's lap, because I know they were slightly in front of him. And he basically gained all that time at the final chicane. So absolutely incredible, especially given that he was running a lower downforce setup than either of the McLarens. The fact that he was basically able to carry so much speed into the S's, I think, really showed how incredible that lap was. In the race, did everything he needed to do. Of course, had that bit of a tense moment during the pit stop where he almost lost the lead. Didn't really do anything wrong though. Did exactly what he needed to. Just stayed straight, stayed on the pit exit, didn't try to swerve too hard, or basically go on the other side of the white line, and just controlled the pace very, very well, and did everything he needed to do to win a very well-deserved race yesterday. So there you go. There is my power rankings for the 2025 Japanese Grand Prix. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.